Ian Pei was an architect who was born in China in an affluent family, and he came to the United States. I don't know exactly at what age, before the college years, and he studied for a while at MIT. Then I think he went to Harvard. He was promoting modernity from the very beginning. He received the Pritzker Prize, as you know, and he was indeed a force in North American architecture, with a large office and with many accomplishments. So I will begin with showing some pictures, kind of an aide-memoir about Ian Pei, always smiling. Almost irritatingly so, because I don't know. I mean, life has problems, as you know. We all have problems. Why is this man smiling all the time? I mean, I know, but no, it's not true. Not all Chinese smile like this. On the other hand, not all Chinese had the success Ian Pei had. He lived a very, very long life. He had a beautiful wife, and he had great commissions, and he built a lot, and everything worked for this man. Anyway, so I guess in his place, anyone would smile. Anyway, as I said, I just go through a few pictures in a rather, aleatory way. Here he is, of course, with the glass pyramid behind him, and then the Louvre and the sky, smiling again. Yes, you did it, Mr. Pei. It's true, you did it. Irritatingly so, almost. I like him more as a young man, he's not yet smiling. And he was, without doubt, a very interesting man. And, the fact that he left MIT, which now I think is considered the best architecture school in the world, and not just architecture, or anyway, is one of the best. In some years, it is considered the best. But then, he went to Harvard, which is not doing, a much worse job at all. Yes, we know you can smile, Mr. Pei. So let's look at his first project. 1949. So this was before just 3 years after the Second World War. Ponce de Leon. Actually, there is the dean at Princeton. Her name is Ponce de Leon, but this is the name of an avenue. I was referring to an architect from Venezuela, married to Nader Tehrani, a very important architect himself and dean of Cooper Union. But this is about an avenue in Atlanta, 1959. Please be kind and turn off the microphone if you are so kind. So, unless you want to say something. You see, at the beginning, Ian Pei did, whatever came to him. That it was after the war. It was, he didn't yet become the star that he became. Louis Kahn also started very modestly. And most architects, if you see the first buildings by Frank Gehry, you won't believe they were done by Frank Gehry. They arrived at that, flowering, so to speak, neurotical or otherwise, referring to Frank Gehry. But at the beginning, they did, almost conventional buildings like here. The Mesa, now all of a sudden, we see something else. The Mesa Laboratory of the National Center for Atmospheric Research, it's already sculptural work, powerful work in terms of, volumetric interest, and it is sculptural. It has vigor. I like this work. I don't know when it was built, but I think in the 50s. And it stands out still because of the vigor of the volumes, the sculpturalness of the building. Dormitories, a new college in Florida. So now we go approximately chronologically through his oeuvre, through his works. These are early works. Dormitories, a new college in Florida, IMPA. I like this work too. You know, it has the labyrinthical quality of some of the villages in China. I think, because he was born there and he grew up in China, something of China was with him all the time. Maybe in later years, some of those roots became less obvious. We'll see a work by him done in China later in his life when he returns, so to speak, to China. But this work, I think, in Florida, the new college, the dormitories, I personally like it. I like those narrow spaces, as someone called them in Romanian, spații gătuite. Well, we have kind of something like this. It's very possible that certain proximities here would make some people uncomfortable. But considering it was a community for students, it is a community for students, I guess it works. I personally like this work, although indeed there might be here functional problems also in terms of light and sunlight, but it worked. It worked for IMPA. When we look at the actual pictures, we don't see that density and those narrow corridors. We see sunlight, but maybe it's just this picture that shows a much more airy, architectural reality. Now, the famous John F. Kennedy Library. He indeed received, he was spoiled with incredible commissions. I mean, think just about this, the John F. Kennedy Library. And it is, it's still a work which I admire for its freshness, for its modern impetus. I don't know. I mean, yes, there is a lot of glass. Yes, you can tell this is a building that, proclaims, in a certain way, authority and, almost governmental. Now, of course, we know it's the governmental library. It could have been anything else, or actually, but it's probably impressive. Entering this space and ignoring the bill, the electrical bill, because here you would suffocate in the summer and freeze in the winter because of so much glass. But it's probably impressive. The geometry that IMPA uses is very often very simple. A circle, a triangle, a square, rotated or not. I think it's a good building. And strangely, perhaps, some of the later presidential libraries, in my opinion, are not as creative and as fresh as this one done by IMPA. Now that's how he worked for all kinds of large commissions, like the convention center in New York City. He was, his office was a master in manipulating large surfaces of glass with a convincing steel structure, exactly what he did actually with the glass pyramid in Paris. Now, this is, of course, the opening of the library, but a sad event because of the death of JFK. Here is another Kennedy, his brother, and here is President Carter. I guess the library came into being under President Carter. All in all, of course, it's a moment of remembrance. Here is the wife, Jacqueline Onassis, the wife of JFK. You can tell from their faces that it was not really a moment of total joy and lightness. Because yes, it was a tragic event in the life of the United States, and the murder of the president. The building is accomplished, I think, and he has all the reasons to smile again here. Yeah. So the presidential Kennedy Library, built by IMP. You'll see that the other buildings he built very different in terms of function. That is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I think that's how it is called. It's not very different from the presidential library. So the narrative is, although they are very different, the functions of the buildings, they don't look so very different. Now, what is this? This is a less known work. Is like a park. It's a park. Let's see where it is. Providence Cathedral Square, modeled after the Greek Agora marketplace. Let's only hope that indeed, like in the Agora of ancient times, philosopher met here and they disputed this ideas. But I don't think this is happening because, this is not Hyde Park, and this is not, this is a city where on all sides of the park or of the square, countless cars drive incessantly, and the so-called Agora, as you can see, is empty. Anyway, actually, even this work, I don't think is so bad. From the little I can see, we can see from this picture. He didn't do the cathedral, let's say it, but he did the park in front of it, and I like the fact that it's not symmetrical, or is it? It might actually be, but from this angle, it doesn't seem to be alarmingly symmetrical. It's not rigid, and the trees animate the space. I would say rather pleasantly. Yeah, I think it is symmetrical. Anyway, but there is a feeling of being open and void, and yes, somehow needing to receive participants to some unknown activity. A penthouse, Lamar building 1976, penthouse Lamar building 1976. I guess he only did the top here, the penthouse. I remember a project by Tadao Ando, also kind of in this period, well, not so alarmingly big, but still, with a lot of glass and so on, with some acrobatics at the top. Dallas City Hall, IMP. Again, a work with courage. When you think that it's a governmental building, normally you think about federal buildings or governmental buildings as being rather conformist. Well, you see, it's not conformist. It has this geometrical vigor, which I think we could easily appreciate. What does such a building tell you? If you have business to do in this building, it's probably a refreshing feeling you get, because the building doesn't communicate stiffness or boredom or excessive bureaucracy, but rather the vigor of efficiency and correctness and so on, which is important. I think it's very important. I like this building too. Today, probably we don't have any longer this kind of belief in institutions and this kind of belief in this kind of, uncompromising modernity. The John Hancock Tower in Boston, and the tower it is, I understood some years ago there were problems. They had to change the windows, or I think for the whole tower. Well, problems exist always. But it's an important tower in Boston, and it was designed by IMP Fried and Cobb. I don't know if exactly because he had two other partners plus associates and sub partners and so on. A big firm. It became a big firm. Everson Museum. I like it again. You know, it's cryptical, it's monumental, it's doing its job. It is protecting the artworks. After all, a museum essentially, conceptually, is nothing else but, you know, a box, a storage, a cultural storage. Not bad. Now we arrive at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which I mentioned, and which is, well, not identical with the Kennedy Library, but the architectural language is not very different. As you can see, like in fact, you can see the Louvre pyramid right here, you know, in the United States, in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Lots of glass, giant triangle, maybe two, and then, you know, some other things. But all in all, it's not a bad building. It's I don't know. I mean, in a way, it is simplistic, but it's executed well. It's convincing because it doesn't show too many Hamletian dilemmas or you know, unnecessary doubting. It works. Now, does it represent the spirit of rock and roll? Well, maybe to an extent because of some, you know, adventurous architectonic gestures. But again, I mean, what does rock and roll have in common with the Kennedy Library? One is about knowledge, and the other one is about, you know, almost anti-knowledge. I mean, I love rock and roll. It's true. It has energy. It has. I think we need rock and roll in our lives. In fact, I think we need a rock and roll architecture. Is this a rock and roll architecture? Only partially, but I think it's okay. It is okay. And the rock and rollers had enough money, so there was no problem for IMP to build whatever he wanted. Again, if you look at the plan, what do you see? Some derivation from the triangle, a square. This is actually almost half of a square. So a triangle, which is half of a square, a circle. Things are not too complicated. He works with basic geometries. Situated impeccably and so on. And inside, of course, here they are. Ray Charles, let me see if I recognize them. John Lennon, I see Tina Turner. I don't know who those three people are, but anyway, I love rock and roll. In fact, if my laptop would have allowed me to play music while we have Zoom presentations, I think you would have listened to a lot of music. But I know when I play Zoom and YouTube, it doesn't work. Anyway, again, sloping glass surfaces, giant, and underneath, those who can pay the bills. But at that time, there was no concern for, you know, the climate change and sustainability. Society Hill Towers in Philadelphia, housing, I like them. You know, they are simple, they are sincere, they are strong. There is a certain level of lack of glamour, which is actually a quality, I think. Are they domestic? Well, not in the sweet sense of the word, not in the sense of, you know, gingerbread house, but he also built kind of similar towers in New York City, and I hope we see them. What can we say? These are not for proletarians. You know, they are expensive apartments. You know, proletarians cannot afford you know, designers like IMP. It's interesting that, for example, I mean, you know, with a grid, and nothing but a grid, he actually is able to create an architecture that is not disappointing. The inside, better move forward. What can we say? He's not responsible for the furnishings. He is more responsible with what you see here. Yeah. Large spaces, of course, a lot of air conditioning going in because, you know, what can you do? The Silver Towers in New York, these are the towers that I refer to, not very different from what we saw in Philadelphia with a sculptural work by Picasso, because Picasso did everything in art, absolutely everything, even Rose Theatre, I don't know if you know. I mean, Picasso was something else, so to speak. And he also lived a long life, just like IMP. There are people who live a lot, you know. Like yesterday, a friend of mine who is actually here now told us that you know, Peter Eisenman is planning to even build something later on after he teaches a little more, and he's almost 90. So Picasso in the front and IMP in the back. Gateway East, Singapore. I don't insist too much on this because we have a lot to see. After IMP, will follow Peter Zumthor and then Olmsted, if you'll still be here. Unfortunately, in my opinion, in the 80s and 90s, IMP became, maybe because there were too many commissions, and you know, he couldn't handle all of them. So there were important partners there, like Fried and Henry Cobb, and they became the authors actually of some of the buildings of the larger office. So it wasn't just him. You know, office buildings, corporate buildings, correctly built, but nothing really very special or you know, very creative even. You see, Pei, Cobb, and Free. This was the name of the firm, but they had many other people with them. Of course, the Four Seasons Hotel. Already here we see postmodernism. I don't know if Free or Harry Cobb had you know, a significant saying in this particular building. They were both good architects, and they had their own individuality. I don't know if IMP by himself would have designed this building in this way. Maybe he would have. After all, his name was still there at the top of the firm. But here we see the influence of postmodernism. Still not in a very bothering way, I would say. So there is still the same, you know, vigor that characterized earlier works by him. He didn't really, I mean, yes, at the entrance here, I think it's lamentable, but what can you do? At that time, even architects in Japan, the sophisticated Japan, collapsed under the weight of postmodernism. What's going on here is the compromise with postmodernism, and to me is you know, questionable, but it was done. What can we do? L'Enfant Plaza Hotel. Now this is more like IMP. You see here the pyramid that later was built at the Louvre was built here. Where was it? I don't say, it's not written, unfortunately. So, you know, the pyramid was not unique that he planted in front of the Louvre. It is planted here in front of this building also. He designed both. So, unfortunately, as I said, in the 80s and the 90s, he, maybe in a way it's explainable because of the large quantity of commissions. You know, some of these buildings are not, you know, immensely creative. We have to face it. The pyramid is a pyramid, the glass pyramid. What, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, if behind it would have been the Louvre, you would have said this is the glass pyramid of the Louvre. Well, it's not at the Louvre, and what is here is not the Louvre. It's okay. The pyramid in Paris, since we talked about it, everybody knows it. There is no tourist who goes to Paris and doesn't immediately rush to see the pyramid. Here he is, triumphant in a rather, infantile way, if I'm allowed to be malicious. Sorry, but anyway, I used to bike around this pyramid. Yeah. Personally, I have some problems, if you allow me to express my subjectivity about this. Because yes, maybe I'm a conformist, but for me, a pyramid should be cryptical and opaque, like they are in Egypt. A transparent pyramid to me is problematic, although I used one myself. I made one myself, and in fact, before IMPA, but mine remained on paper, I think in 1980 or so. Anyway, maybe one day I'll show you that project. I have been here. It's okay, but we already know, based on what we saw earlier, that the large triangles of glass, they are not a novelty in his work. We had seen them at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We had seen lots of glass at the Kennedy Library. Personally, when I went inside here, I felt kind of like in an airport. If you didn't see the old buildings, you could have easily said, yeah, I'm on an airport. But it's executed impeccably. The rotation brings in some dynamic quality. I personally think the work is a little bit overappreciated, but this is a you see, consciously or unconsciously, there was a reaction against the glass pyramid. And what we look at in this picture is a work by an artist, I forgot his name, who did this temporary artwork, this trompe-l'oeil, that problematizes the pyramid. You don't know any longer what's going on here. It's actually done with prints, with paperwork. You see it here. It didn't last for long because the wind was blowing these things. But when it started, it was impressive. You didn't know what was going on. Anyway, this was not done by IMPA. What can we say? We missed those times before the pandemic when scenes like these were very common there in front of the Louvre. The reason I have some problems with this pyramid of glass are the same with the doubts I have about the Reichstag dome, also in glass, by Sir Norman Foster. It's very interesting that for two authoritarian buildings, the Reichstag and the Louvre, two modern architects chose glass architecture. In the case of the French, of Paris, the glass pyramid. In the case of Berlin, a glass dome. I understand that they both wanted to express some kind of a democratic revenge on the authoritarian dimensions of the older buildings. But I don't know. I am not against oxymorons or paradoxes, but I'm not truly convinced. And I understood there were there was criticism against this work, but by IMPA. Anyway, it was done, but I do like this part. I like that the pyramid. There is this smaller pyramid inside that points downwards. This part of his intervention there, I like. maybe because it's about in this case the pyramid is reversed, and thus it opposes further the centrality of power. But otherwise, in many respects, this very busy, I almost said airport, this very busy museum, resemblance here and there, a large supermarket or a mall. What can we do? The democratization of culture. The view from the top. Another view of that. I don't know exactly when this photograph was taken of that subversive work of that artist. Yes, Mr. Yes, yes, he's like a kid here, pointing towards his work with an obviousness which is a little bit provocative for me. But anyway, Bank of China, another important work by him. No, the truth is he was an architect of ability to handle large programs with spectacular structure sometimes, and a master of employing triangles. I mean, look, it's impeccable what we see here. I mean, the execution is impeccable. The design, I'm sure, was impeccable too. Now that these people might risk their lives here, it's possible. But anyway, you realize the immensity of the building when you contemplate the fragility and the scale of the human beings. Almost difficult to see. And this is just a detail of the building. It's huge, but it's a bank. So if banks are not huge, then what? Because we don't build any longer cathedrals in this way. So the bank is the new cathedral. The bottom here to me is a little bit problematic, because it has almost nothing to do with the rest of the building. It's a base, it's a platform, but rather conformist and almost historicist. You don't see it from most angles. You just see the silhouette, and the silhouette is impressive because of these triangles which animate the building. Glass, glass, and again glass, as somebody called them, Andrea Kahn, an architect and theoretician in the United States. She talked about the demagogy of glass. Indeed, glass can be and is very often demagogical, because it gives you the illusion that through transparency you can access everything that you see. But it's an illusion, because you are still separated, and sometimes very much so, because you can't even open a door. Do you think that any door, any window here opens? No way. So yes, there is transparency. The eye sees far away, but the eye, what about the other senses? This is certainly not a sustainable building. This is for sure. And most skyscrapers are not, if not all of them. So when I hear Sir Norman Foster talk about sustainability, I feel like having a bitter smile, because it's demagogy. Most buildings by, if not all the buildings by Sir Norman Foster, require a huge amount of technology to compensate for the modernism of the glass and steel structures that he uses. Again, the plan, of course, it's, conceptually, the building is not so difficult to comprehend. It's a clear scheme. The diagonals take care of the need for, some kind of a spectacle. And there is the purity of the square, the purity of the triangle. and everything works. And with the money of a huge bank, everything works. Now we arrive at the Miho Museum. This is a museum, I think, in Japan. A different context now, because he's not any longer in the United States. I like this work, and he built another one in China. We are going to see it too. He doesn't make, fatal mistakes, because he perfected an architectural language which is convincing for almost all programs. But it is, in my opinion, it is a little bit predictable. And in terms of its level of poetry, I don't know. I mean, did he achieve here the balance, the harmony between the spirit of geometry and the spirit of fineness? Sometimes maybe, but most of the time, I think, IMP was a good architect, but he himself recognized, when the son, the illegitimate son of Louis Kahn, visited him for the film he made, My Architect, he did recognize that Kahn was a greater architect because he was a greater artist. There was an artistic side in IMP as well, but I think IMP, just like Philip Johnson, understood that Louis Kahn was more intense, somehow less commercial, in a way more complex. And I appreciate the fact that a man of IMP's stature recognized this fact. This says something about his character in a positive way. Yes, there is a certain level of mundanity in his work, or a certain commercialism, but it's not bothering. It's not bothering. And again, because of his manipulations of triangles, in this case, this roofing, he is able to animate a space in interesting ways. Louis Memorial Chapel. Yes, let's see how it looks outside. Yeah. I don't know if he had in mind St. Mary Cathedral by St. Mary Cathedral by Kenzo Tange in Tokyo. I have a feeling he did, but he created something which belongs to him. But there are some, echoes, so to speak, from Tange. A religious work done in a language which, yes, it's through and through modern. Now, the National Gallery of Art in Washington, this is one of his best works, in my opinion. I like it more than most other works by him. Yes, the interior is kind of predictable, escalators, glass handrails, steel and glass, roofing. But the plan of the building has a dynamic quality because of two triangles interlocked and opposing each other. And it is the dialectics between the triangles makes it, additionally dynamic. We already saw that play with the triangles at the Louvre, where there was, the big pyramid outside and then a smaller pyramid inside pointing downwards. Some sketches by IMP. And here is the building, and it's refreshing to see here, the White House, and to see here this building. And I'm very happy that, the North Americans welcomed, vigorous modernity not far away from the center of power. But this is dedicated to art. And so maybe the otherness of art obliged to this. I like the plans of this building, as you can see them here. abstract, astute, clean, dynamic. So there is a balance, I would say, here between being and becoming. They are stable and unstable at the same time. So this is the plan of this building. I think I personally like more the bidimensionality of the drawings than because here I think he could have done more, but I think IMP often he was unable to completely eliminate a certain level of mundanity or commercialism. And this can be seen even here. This could have been, I'm sorry, Mr. IMP, but this could have been a mall too. But yes, there is Alexander Calder here suspended from the ceiling. Artists are always improving, well, not always, sometimes improving what the architect was unable to achieve properly. But here we see, his building compared to the, rigid, architecture of, an absent modernity. Yes, I like it, especially seen from above or in the plans. I think inside the building could have been a little bit better, but it's probably very popular exactly because it's not a little bit better. Again, we see some kind of a pyramid of glass here. He had some, signature elements that he repeated in various configurations or occasions. The underground emerging. The Deutsches Historisches Museum in Berlin. I passed by this building. I didn't enter it. It's not bad. It's just that this, excessive trust in glass, in my opinion, and I'm not talking about, sustainability or the climate change, although I should. But there is here again, I cannot avoid the words of Andrea Kahn, the demagogy of glass. It becomes so very easy. You just wherever you have walls, instead of having walls, you just put glass, and then you have the steel structure. But Frank Lloyd Wright, I think, correctly said that it might not be anything difficult with making architecture if there wasn't the need for windows. But Frank Lloyd Wright referred to a different kind of conception about windows. In the case of IMP, he had no problems. He just traced a few lines, structural lines, and then everything else, covered with glass. Without discrimination, in a way. It works, but again, it's a little simplistic, in my opinion. And again, who pays the bills here to create an acceptable level of temperature inside and humidity is probably a little bit furious at Mr. IMP. But now I'm thinking I'm talking in righteous terms, opportunistically, not forgetting the time we live in, that is climate change and so on. Glass, and again glass. Try to imagine how it is here in the summer if there was no air conditioning. It would melt down. But fortunately, the Germans have a strong economy, so I guess they can afford some air conditioning. Yeah. I don't know why modernity thinks that only with glass, a lot of glass, it can assert itself. Here, we see a circle which could have been, if it wasn't so mundane, in some work by Kahn, but he was aware, he knew he was a good architect, but he knew he was a little bit less good than Louis Kahn. Anyway, we arrived at the museum in China. Finally, he's back to his native country. And I am sure it was an emotional encounter to build there. I don't know if he built any other building besides this. It's a museum. He tried to connect in a way with the culture of the place. When I say it's almost inappropriate to call China a place, because it's a sum of almost infinite number of places. It's a huge country. He is at his best, as I said, when he manipulated triangles and surfaces, and he always did good things in this way. But the building still is a little bit, in my opinion, a little bit predictable. Is there symbolism of the hexagon in China? I don't know. He works with rotations, as you can see, various rotations, and the space underneath benefits from these rotations. Rotations usually activate a space. So when you have troubles with a building that is too static, begin to rotate some floors if possible, and things will be kind of solved. It's okay, I would say. I mean, I'm not a good evaluator, but I don't know. As you can see, he wasn't very at ease to use organic materials. He didn't use brick. These stones are, carefully, distinct from the building. The building has impeccable white walls. I don't know. It's a little bit septic for my taste, but I am subjective myself. So, water. China is very good at this. They bring water near many of their buildings. They surrounded a building by Alvaro Siza. They are very, very appreciative of water, and I think this helps, if for nothing else but the reflections in the water. But I like the fact that the building is not monolithical, is approximating somehow the village atmosphere of those. I keep saying all the time, I never travel to China, but I have a beautiful book from 1928, a German book on Chinese architecture and landscape, and I saw beautiful pictures of old villages. So I think China, if it explores the rural culture that it has, could actually provoke even, generate even some kind of a revolution in architecture. If the word revolution is not too ambitious, and probably is. Again, the roof, the ceiling, they animate the building, and rightly so, because the roof is the transition between the building and the sky. And both in China and Japan, the roof is, I'm referring to the traditional architecture, is very important. The Museum of Islamic Art in Doha, in Qatar, this one to me is a little bit literal, a little bit mimicking, conveniently the so-called local culture. I find it a little bit sterile. And again, he's too accommodating. The level of abstraction he arrived at, in my opinion, is not sufficient. But rotations do exist in the stalactites and stalagmites of the Arab world and the Islamic world. But here they are a little bit predictable and simplistic, I would say. And then he has this his windows are a little bit cosmetic, or they are not very convincing. They are not truly felt, I think. Anyway, he built it. Not to speak about these windows here, which again are they're too convenient, you know, too literal and too uncreative, I think. He built it. And this kind of stair, you know, it's the stair of authority and power and symmetry and convention, essentially. And here we see other symbols of that. Doha, I am paid.